And at this moment, permit me to toss my hat symbolically to them and appreciatively applaud the fine, fine work that they're conducting in creating a new consciousness in Namibia. For you to make sense out of what I'm going to share with you, let me tell you a story. About 15 years ago, I suffered from a chronic medical condition for more than 5 years. My nose was permanently congested. I used all kinds of witchcraft to unblock the nose. In my village, there is a mechanism that you employ to unblock your nose, and many times it can work. You have an herb that you cook in a pot, and when the water boils, they cover you with a thick blanket. And you have to endure the immediate heat emanating from this recently opened pot. And by faith, your nose can be unblocked. I tried that. It worked when I was in the village, but the moment I left Rundu, the cure disappeared. So it went on and on and on until somebody at UNISA, a colleague of mine, told me that this condition was a consequence of an ear and throat ailment. So this person persuaded me to go and see Dr. Karel Swanepoel at the Roman Catholic school near UNISA, Roman Catholic University, and now it's a medical school, and now it's a hospital. It's a big Roman Catholic hospital. So I went there with Karel Swanepoel, which is operational. I was very cynical of what he was going to do to me. And I was afraid that he may bring a blanket that was unfamiliar to me. So I was waiting in the consulting room of Dr. Swanepoel, hoping that he would show up with a blanket and a pot. He comes with instruments, small instruments, and he puts ointment here, ointment there, ointment there. And he says, I'll be back in 5 minutes. This is unfamiliar for me. He comes back and he looks at the signs on the marks where he put his medication. And he says to me, now let's go lie down on your back. And he looks with his little light here and there and there. And he says to me, my friend, you have an allergy. You are allergic to house dust. What kind of illness is that? He has diagnosed it, and he prescribed for me and my welfare one little pill and a very small dose of nasal spray which I had to employ twice a day. And the condition disappeared forthrightly. He said, this is a problem of ear and throat, not my nose. What does my nose have to do with my ear and my throat? What medical people do is study the whole physiological makeup of the body so that they know how the nose relates to the ear and the ear to the eye. That is why if I hit you on this eye, this one will cry also, because they are connected. If I hit you on the nose, the eye will have a tear. The body is one unit, constantly in communication, one part with the other. Nations are like that. So I'm sharing this story with you to depict, as it were, the backdrop against which we have to play our feelings and sentiments and our knowledge when we dream about one Namibia, one nation. Which parts are participating? Is it the ear, the throat, the nose? Let me give you, therefore, a background of who we are so that we can now understand our trauma as a people. First, the phenomenon that we describe as the Namibian nation is a direct consequence of European adventurism. We never decided on our own to be with one another as a nation. It's like when you are on the bus to Arandis, and there are other people on the bus, and you arrive in Arandis, and people ask you, how did you get here? You say, I came with a green bus. So your color is green. Because that's your memory. You came on the bus, you did not walk. It is important for us as people of Africa, in all the shapes and formats we come. Some of us are darker of the hue, others are lighter. In the anthropology of scholarship, we have been designated as black and white and colored. You may not know that when the European settlers came first and they arrived in Angola, the place that we call Southern Africa did not have colored people. There were only people who were designated anthropologically as Negroid people, African people. So the first miscegenation was the African people and the Caucasians, those people who came from Europe. If you look at the origin of species, the description of sociologists, anthropologists, historians, sociologists, political scientists of old, they only have 3 species in the configuration of human civilization. The Caucasians, these are people who we consider white, but you haven't seen a white person as yet in your life. People we call white are more pink than white. A white person would look like the paper, no life, no blood. There are no black people. Black is charcoal. They're more brown or coffee. So Charles Darwin described that there were 3 species. The white people, and how do we distinguish these people from the other? They're the only civilization who have, by design of God's purpose, hair textures that may be different from each other. You have white people with whitish hair, called them blonde. You have those with red hair, and it's normal. Black hair and brown hair. And the hair that they have invariably grows beyond the ear. They have color that are blue, green, brown, and all the eyes can see. They are, to all intents and purposes, the harbingers of the survival mode in the modern world. And it so happens that they are the people who make certain that development happens faster than the other civilizations, because they are about survival. That's why Charles Darwin said the species that will adapt to change better and faster than the other will be in control. You have white Rhodesians right now in Namibia. those that our brother and father and uncle and grandparent Mugabe got rid of. And they are now in Namibia. They have farms and they are producing things. If they die, they will be buried here. Their children can join the Namibian Defense Force effortlessly and fight and die for Namibia. Because they make sure that where they are, they improve the conditions there for purposes of the future. The second category they give us are those they call Mongoloid, the Asian people. These are the inhabitants currently of China, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Mauritius, Bangladesh. They are Asian people. They are invariably all dark-haired and brownish skin. You will not find many ladies in Singapore or in New Delhi, or in China who are blonde. You may have a variation here and there, but in the main, 99% of them have dark hair. They are also very big protectors of their culture and civilization, or that which they understand belongs to them. The Indians in Durban, they have been in South Africa, my friends, 5 generations non-stop. None of them have been to Mumbai. They marry one another, they eat curry, and they name their children Jayashree, Anand, and this. You will not find an Indian child in Durban with the name Bongani. They stick to their culture. And they have the third category of race, they call the Negroid race. That is who? Apparently the description is very, very obvious. Their hair never goes beyond the ear unless there's interference from a salon of chemical nature. They say with their ladies, you can never make a mistake. You know whether she's coming or going. You look. At their giftedness, the cultural weapons, and you know she's leaving now. They are the most resistant to change. Africans don't like to change. They remain in yesterday. This is why I go to my village for witchcraft. Now, those who are Africans, most of us were not here in Namibia before. I'm second generation Namibian. My father and mother were the only ones, the first one to be baptized this side of the Kavango River. What were they before? I don't know. Nobody has documented the trajectory of their movement. Now, let's pause here and say, where is the colored person in the description that I gave you now? Absent. In all fairness, the colored person came into existence in Angola or Mozambique, maybe South Africa, for the first time exactly 9 months after the arrival of the first white settlers. They were not there. The idea, therefore, of a Namibia is not our own making. I can bet you that at least 60% of the young people in this room right now would not even know where the name Namibia comes from. you know, power to you. Most people do not know because we have not talked about it. 95% of the African people right now on the continent would not tell you where the name Africa came from. How do we find umbrage, homage, sanctuary, and pride in something that we cannot describe? We never named ourselves Africans. As a matter of fact, most of the time, we are not Africans. We are Africans when it suits us, and we are others when it suits us. To make it very clear, give me 2 minutes to demonstrate this to you. My friend, what is your surname? Mangundu. From? Where? You came to Rundu from where? Okay, now please work with me. You will see. Please hear me. Okay, Mangundu, you. When you were 5 years old, you were in Chamango?
No.
Kayengona. Okay. Who did people tell you you were? Ushambu? Dimkawa? Ushambu? Okay. When did you know that you were Kabangu?
When I hit 15 years.
Okay, 15.
Yeah.
Okay. When did you know that you were a boy?
Around 8-9 years.
Okay. When did you know? This is very deep. I'm going to walk you through our mystery and our misery. Yeah. He knew that he was Kamango when he was 14, 15. Before that, he was a Sambu boy. He knew that he was black when he was 8. Mm-hmm. When did you know you were Namibian?
When we received independence.
Thank you very much. When did you know you were an African? You're still working on it. You get the point?
Yes.
I'm going to deal now. When we were small children, all of us, you did not know that you were a boy or a girl until somebody said to you, don't cry, you are a boy. Don't sit with your legs open, you are a girl. Eat first because you're a boy. Eat last because you're a girl. You are a girl. Go and fetch cows. You are a boy. And if you're a hetero girl, you are told, go and milk the cows because you're a girl. And you don't know that until you meet someone who has a different infrastructure from yours. When you go to swim in the river and you see the other child is either handicapped or has more endowment on the body than you, then you say, no, why are we different? Yeah? You don't know that you are black. You don't know you are white until you meet someone who looks different from you. You would not even know right now that you are handsome or beautiful unless somebody told you so. So our identity derives literally and figuratively from what we were told as children. And we're still recovering from that trauma. You were Kwambi, Ndonga, Sambu, Bukushu, white, colored. And in all this morass, the person who was wounded the most, who was most afflicted in our composition in Southern Africa is the colored person. Because the colored person received most of the blows from both sides. The philosophy, the mentality, the psychology, the psychosis, the disease, and this is of white superiority, which coexisted permanently with black inferiority, told the colored person that you were on your way to become white. Had it not been for the immorality of the African people who have low morality and low ethics, you would have been white. Amper baas. So the colored person grows up with tremendous anger. I would be white today. 3, we all came from what they call today the Great Lakes, which is Congo, DRC, Burundi, Rwanda, Southern Cameroon, and Angola. It's where we dwelled for the most part, all of us who are known as Bantus. Bantus were people. Why are we called Bantus? Because we considered ourselves human first and the others are the others. I had this experience in New York. When you are overseas, all black people are like you. In fact, even white South Africans become more black when you are overseas. You are one family. So we went to visit this Zulu family in Manhattan, the Bilagazis. So they had children there, and they insisted on speaking isiZulu to their children. So we come there, they told their children, family members are coming. That's how we speak when we're overseas, right? Everybody's related. So we come there, and the children greet us in isiZulu, and we did not speak isiZulu. The one boy goes to his father and says, "Oh, you told me that human beings are coming. These are not human beings." You speak to a basic Mutswana tota. Yeah? And you go to the village there, and the Tswana would say, "Oh, umutuwen." It means you speak Setswana. Yeah? Because the original definition of people who are Bantu, of a human being, is themselves. Now, let me shock you. Last year, I had the shock of my life. I encountered for the first time an educated Bushman woman in Namibia. So I was very curious, and I said to her, "Can we go and have a drink?" A friend of hers joined. They are nurses. They're very, very learned. And you would understand that the people they are describing in anthropology as first peoples, the Native Americans, called Red Indians, the colored people, the bastard people, the Maoris in New Zealand, Australia, and the Bushmen in our context have a higher tendency to abuse alcohol and tobacco. They're still studying why. And many of you have experienced that. So I pumped them with a bit of the devil's water. So they opened up, and they told me that in their word, in their language, the San language, the original San language, the word for God is very close to the word for themselves. Yeah? They are, in other words, the closest to God. The rest of us, whether we are black or white, are visitors to the world of humanity. And I asked them a few drinks later, would you marry a black Namibian? Without checking with each other, they screamed, "Never." I said, "Why?" And they said to each other in their own language, which they translated to me to mean that black people are the devil. We are the problem. Do you see where I'm leading with this? Our definitions are very, very strong because we all use language. And my friends, language, carry words and grammar and syntax and morphology. Words have history. Words have an attitude. Words have culture. Words have tradition. Words judge. Words punish and reward. We came here, my friends, because there were 3 European civilizations that got together: Great Britain, Portugal, and the German Reich, and they determined our border configuration. So between here and here is my sphere of influence. At that time, my friends, the struggle was for power among the European countries. They wanted to conquer Africa to prove to themselves who was stronger than the other. In other words, we would not have been Namibian if it was not for Germany, Portugal, and Great Britain. We are a consequence of their love or hate relationship. 4, we have arrived where we are today, traveling on 2 tracks of the train. This one side is the track of colonialism, imperialism, divide and rule, and apartheid, which told us to hate ourselves, which told us to dislike ourselves. And that road left us in a difficult situation of a psychosis and a disease called Black inferiority complex. That complex that translates itself in 3 fashions. 1, self-doubt. 2, self-pity. 3, self-hate. Now, a person who doubts him or herself, pities him or herself, hates him or herself cannot build a nation. Nations cannot be built on the foundations of love, not doubt, not hate, not pity. This other side is the road of the liberation struggle. That too ill-prepared us. The struggle for liberation taught us to be suspicious of one another, to be indifferent from one another, to be careless with one another, because both apartheid and the politics of struggle ill-prepared us to become one nation. However, in the genesis of the struggle, as it were, there was a flickering light that our leaders spoke about: one Namibia, one nation. But I can tell you without fear of contradiction that we have not had yet a leadership that really mortgaged the depth of that dictum: one Namibia, one nation. And this was still struggling right now. What I'm trying to say is, in the struggle for independence, our efforts were spent on fighting a war and winning that war by all means necessary. It is very difficult to find a moment that we really thought about what to build after independence. No African nation got it right. And that's why Frantz Fanon is correct when he writes that after independence, all African countries suffer from 2 particular diseases. The one disease is intellectual laziness. And we all suffer from that. Our leaders in the struggle, my friends, used to reason more with one another. They allowed quarrel and disagreement for purposes of the future. You may not know that Tata Nyoma would not have been the politician and the father figure that we know today had it not been for the way it was the Heritage Council that discovered Nyoma. So we cannot send only Oshihero-speaking people overseas to petition on our behalf. We need to reach out beyond our noses. This is how Tata Nyoma was smuggled out of Namibia through Botswana, and he has become the founding president of the Republic of Namibia. So there was that dream of one Namibia, one nation. And the genesis of that dream, my friend, is in the genocidal moment of the struggle. You will discover that in 1904, when the Hereros and the Namas were fighting a common enemy, they gravitated towards one another and say, we need to stand together. It is that moment that Maharero, leading the Maharero, wrote a letter to his friend, Bad Boy, who was a little unreliable. He was trying to cut corners. And Maharero wrote him a letter, which is in the library in the archives. My friend, it is time for us to put our differences aside and stand together to face this common enemy. We'd rather die fighting. So before SWAPO, there was a spirit of one Namibia, one nation. And then comes SWANU, the Southwest African National Union. I'm sure some of you may not have known that SWANU is older than SWAPO. That Nyom was a member of SWANU before he became a member of SWAPO. They were instrumental in fashioning an ideology for one nation. And then SWAPO, the rest you know. Let me jump quickly to the Bantustanization of Namibia. I say anyone here who has not heard the word Bantustan before, don't be shy. Raise your hand with confidence. The Bantustan was a description of a territory, as it were, that white South African governments decided belonged to black people. Now, they started that in South Africa first. Beginning in 1913, when the English was in power, the Afrikaners were not in power. Racism or apartheid were not invented by Afrikaners. They were the victims of white racism. The Afrikaners were in concentration camps of the British. They were the achtergeblevenes, the downtrodden, the disadvantaged. Now, the Land Act that created the impetus that South Africans organized themselves into what we now today know as the African National Congress, 1912. When the British government was fashioning a paradigm to take more than 77% of the land in South Africa and bequeath it legally only to white people. The black people agitated and started the African National Congress about land rights. The point is, at that time, color was not really the issue. It's about rights, privileges, and my friends, the fear of the minority. When you are a minority in any situation, you do everything possible to cover your back and protect yourself. So the whites in South Africa were feeling a bit smothered. In 1959, they promulgated the Land Act. Now, this is now after apartheid came into vogue. Apartheid was born in June 1948, to be exact, on the 4th of June 1948, when Daniel Malan won the election as the leader of the National Party. Now, I owe this to you as young people to know the genesis of apartheid. Because what the leaders are telling you is not apartheid. That's black exclusion. Apartheid was used for the first time in the language of the Dutch in 1943. And it was a journalist who was writing in the newspaper De Burger in Cape Town, describing the tense relationship, as it were, between the two races at the time. And the two races, my friends, were the English-speaking white South Africa on the one hand, and the Dutch African-speaking white South Africans on the other. They were the two races. So the beginning of apartheid was not about black and white. It was about English and Dutch. Now, please hear this. On the 4th of June 1948, Dr. Dr. Malan was sworn in as the new Prime Minister of the Union of South Africa. Malan struggled in his spirit to create a new civilization on the African continent. He was a pastor by trade, and when he was sworn in as Prime Minister on that day, he gave a very, very important speech which gave birth to the condition under which we suffer today. The title of his speech was Drie Merkpunte. Drie Merkpunte. That means not 3 goals, not 3 objectives, 3 targets. Merkpunte. It's very serious. He says, ladies and gentlemen, fellow South Africans, I have been in the business of politics for 33 years because I want to achieve only 3 targets. Merkpunt nummer 1. Om die geskeurde geleedere van die Afrikaner volk te probeer heel. To knit together the brokenness of the Afrikaner and the Dutch and constitute from them a community that will become the senior trustees in the affairs of the nation. Yeah? He was saying an injury to one is an injury to all, but you have to be white. You can't disagree with that, can you? It's very strong. Why was it strong at that point, my friends? On the entire African continent, there were only 4 countries that were self-governing. Only 4. The rest of Africa, we now have 53.5 member states of the African Union. 53.5. There were only 4. Egypt, Ethiopia, Liberia, and South Africa. Ghana was a colony of Britain. Can you understand the fear of white people? Yeah? Nothing wrong with Merkpunt number 1. Merkpunt number 2. He says, we will never survive under the aegis of christelijke beschaving, Christian civilization, if the 2 races stand apart from each other on the dark continent of Africa. So for us as white people to survive, we need to stand together. You remember Maharero's letter, 1904? Yeah? Malan says, white people, let's stand together to survive this continent. That time, 1948, the so-called Second World War, which is to all intents and purposes a European tribal war, has just ended in Europe. Europe has fallen apart. The people who found their feet here had no desire or proclivity to go back to the Europe that just broken up. So they wanted to find a home in Africa. Nothing wrong with that. The problem is Merkpunt number 3, where he says, in order for us to eke an existence that's durable in Africa, we need to contain development and teach the black man to be meaningful in the white economy only when he serves as a hewer of wood and a drawer of water. Can you disagree with that? And he spoke only for 19.5 minutes. Inaugural speech, 19.5. Everybody understood what he talked about. These days when our leaders are sworn in anywhere on the African continent, they speak for 3 hours. 2 days. You come home and your friends who didn't go, they said, oh, what did he say? I don't know. I don't know, I was there, I got my matter. I fall asleep. The purpose, the vision was very clear. battle stance came when it was becoming more and more difficult to contain the black population. So at that time, the South African government devised a scheme to break up South Africa into a white area with better land and white black homelands. There were 10 homelands. Bophuthatswana, Ciskei, Transkei, Benda, Gazankulu, Lepoa, Kangwane, Wandebele, each with a prime minister. Each with a flag and a national anthem. My friend, I was with Archbishop Desmond Tutu in December 1984, when it was just announced that he won the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo. Bishop Tutu was given a travel document. He was 53 years old. Pretoria could not give him a passport because he was not a citizen of South Africa. For purposes of going to receive the prize, they gave him what they termed an emergency travel document. And where it said citizenship, Home Affairs said unbekend, unknown, because he was Xhosa, therefore he had to go to either Ciskei or Transkei, and he was raised as a priest in Lesotho. So he had a problem. Now, in our case here in 1962, the same South African government devised the same scheme for Southwest Africa. They appointed the Administrator General, in fact, he was a governor of the Transvaal province, Frans Wodenda, and they gave him a task to break up Namibia like South Africa. So Namibia was given also 10 homelands. Bamboland, Kavango, Caprivi, Hereroland, Damaraland, Kaokoland, Namaland, Bushmanland, and there were 10. So the same scheme was of applicable nature here. Now, the reason I started with my friend here is to remind you how we were introduced to citizenship as Namibians. If you were in a Vambo land, my friend, you were Vambo. And very few people, let me repeat that, very few people resisted that. Those few are those who sacrificed their youth, their livelihood to go into exile. The majority served as secretaries. When I finished my matric, I was destined to become the stamp secretary. And it was a hot position. I was looking forward to it. You remember, in all the regions, there are still stamp canture. Since when does an office have tried? A stamp canture. In other words, that office has a tribal identity. So we were fashioned as children, most of us, first as tribal members. It gets more difficult. In all the languages that I understand on the African continent, there is no translation for the word tribe. Who wants to try? Moshelero? Don't tell me Omoko, it's not tribe. In Oshiwamba, don't tell me Oshiwana, it's not tribe. Don't tell me Omoko, don't tell me that. We do not have a word that's equivalent to tribe, because it's not our problem. The people you describe today as tribes were nations. The Akwanyama were not an extension of the Ndongas. They had a kingdom. It was a complete jurisdiction with the Omkwaniwa or Ombara or King Hompa Fumu. The king was the final authority. The only source of appeal was God himself. Our kings could kill you, true or false? Okay? So if they were kings, they were not an extension of another king. These were nations in their own right. The only thing they did not have is foreign policy. They were nations. They could wage war with one another. And only a nation can wage a war with another nation. We have not worked as Africans through that to say, how do we translate that which we were into that which we are today? Now, for students, please hear this. The word tribe enters our vocabulary from the English biblical times. In the book of Genesis, you encounter the word tribe. First chapter, first book of the Bible, Genesis. There's a story of Jacob, who was later renamed Israel. That means the father of nations, you remember? Now, Jacob had 13 children. One daughter, Dinah or Dinah, depending on where you went to school. And 12 boys. 12 boys. The Bible says these were the 12 tribes of Israel. Is that a negative word? The 12 tribes of Israel. Here begins the difficulty of the girl child, the discrimination against the girl child, the marginalization of the girl child, the denial of rights to the girl child, the exclusion from real estate of the girl child. Dinah did not get land. All the boys got land. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Gad, Dan, Asher, Issachar, Naphtali, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. They all had land. Dinah was raped, had nothing. Where does our problem begin? It is very important for us to interrogate our identity. What I'm really trying to say with the little vocabulary that I possess is that we are a multiplicity of identities in one person. There are times when he is a Sandu. There is a time when he is a Kabango. There is a time when he is black. There is a time when he's a Namibian. There's a time when he's an African. And there comes another dimension that messes up our identity and our common place totally. The arrival of the political party. We did not have political parties before. What is a political party? According to the scholars of political parties, Duverger, Morgenthau, and others.
Source of madness.
They say a political party is an amalgam, is an association of like-minded people who group themselves together to contest for governmental functions. It's not based on tribe. The interest they have is to fight so that they govern, to win an election as a political party. The people who are now bearing party scarves have no intention to govern. The political party has become the new tribe in Africa to bedevil our relationships. Tatekulia Toivo said something very profoundly before he passed on. May his soul rest in peace. He said, I don't mind if my wife belongs to a different party from mine. My relationships are not defined by political party. But in Namibia today, in South Africa today, in all of Africa for that matter, with the exception of Ghana maybe, political party identity describes your correctness, what you are entitled to, how you are perceived, what tenders you qualify to get. Which introduces a new dimension altogether, and this dimension is much more deadly for the young people. They have to lie about their belonging to a political party. They have to lie to the extent that they even exaggerate their age. Last year, there was a function here in Kaptura when we celebrated the birthday of the ruling party. Remember that? At one point, the president said, "Can all the veterans come forward?" What did you see? No one was left on the stage. Even the 18-year-old went, they were veterans. They are lying. Because you have to lie. And we who are older are making it more difficult for you to become relevant and vital and vibrant and to be valorized as a citizen. Where were you in the struggle? That kills you deadly. Then you have to say, "I'm sorry, I was not born yet. If I was born, I would have been prime minister." That's why people are lying now. Those who have controls of the state, are full-time liars. The English word is that they are dissemblers. Terminological inexactitude, peddlers. They would make you feel guilty by the claims which they make. We fought for this country. It's only 21. We fought for this country. We liberated this country. We died for this country. He's still alive. What is a nation? Let's look quickly at the difference between a nation and a country. What do you think is the difference? Is it the same? A nation is an assemblage, a group, an amalgam, a collection of people who group together because they think, they believe, or they hold, or they internalize that they have the same history, the same historical accounts, the same stories. They share a language. Sometimes they share a religion. And they inhabit in one territory. And that territory may not have been designed by themselves, but they are there now. Can we, in all truthfulness, say that the Namibians in the 13+1 regions have the same history, the same heroes and sheroes, the same language? In other words, do they have the same memories of pain and suffering and greatness? Until a nation can share the commonality of greatness, such that they can discourage themselves from doing funny and strange and hurtful things, they are not a nation yet. A country is just a sheer land mass with borders. A country may not have people. What are we? A country or a nation? We are a country, not a nation. Let's look at entities in the world that qualify better, not completely, but better than we do as nations. Germany, the United States of America, France. Yes, they have the advantage that they have been there longer. But length and duration of existence does not cut it. It's the self-definition of a people. How did they start defining themselves? Just last month, a person in France won the election unexpectedly. When they started the campaign, Emmanuel Macron, or however you say it, not macaroni, please. Macron. People did not know who he was. He has certain qualities about him that would disqualify him here completely. He's only 39, you try that here. And his wife is 64, you try that here. In his inaugural speech, he was sworn in on a Sunday. And the inauguration, my friends, lasted only 90 minutes. That's an hour and a half. He spoke for about 20 minutes. And he spelled out the vision of France today, post-Brexit. He says, I want to bring back two things: French leadership and French pride, so that we, as French people, lead the parade towards a future Europe. The brother got it right. There cannot be a nation without a common vision. A vision that brings us together even when we quarrel and disagree. There's a common place where we say, this one I'm willing to die for. What is it in Namibia? Don't tell me membership of a political party. Don't tell me membership of a tribe or a race group. We have not defined it as yet. Because we're still bogged down in the idioms of yesterday and yesteryear. We're still fighting one another on the basis of where you were in the struggle. There is a danger with the African personality, my friends. And that is that we, as African people, worry very little about the future. Yeah. We have a tombstone culture. We celebrate birth, death more than we celebrate birth. When our people die outside of Namibia, we all go home. True or false? We are still bringing sand from Lusaka. If we cannot find the real grave, we just have a maybe here, so we take that soil and we bring it here. White people get buried where they function, where they play a role, where they contribute to the livelihood and the well-being of the collection. We have been bewitched. There is something wrong with Africa. And that you don't care about the future. We care about who you were yesterday and not what you can do. Africans have a problem with individuality, and nations about individuality, what the individuals bring together to the table as a collective. How do they make it right? Why does America control the world as it does today? I'm sure that many of you have heard falsehoods that China will overtake the United States, right? You've heard that. No way on earth. China can never overtake the United States, and I'll lay it out for you why. The power of the United States of America is the definition of the New World Order. The New World Order. And that New World Order was encapsulated in the Declaration of their Independence on the 4th of July, 1776. Remember, the people we call Americans are all immigrants. They formed a nation out of immigrants. There is no true American. All true Americans, they killed the Red Indians. They took the land, gave them drugs, and ruled them. Now, there were three things, my friends, that the Americans are really trying to say is you cannot have a national identity without a common enemy. You can't. The struggle was successful because there was an enemy, colonialism. Without an enemy, how do you fight a collective battle? you turn to each other instead of fighting the enemy. Now, the Americans ran away from 3 enemies historically. 1, the power of the queen or the king. Americans are very, very clear. We don't want no kings here. We are a new nation. That is why today, an American cannot be knighted as a sir or what they call him lord. By law of the United States, you cannot knight an American. They were broken away from that. It is their story, our story is new. There is no Anglican church in America. They broke away completely. The version they have of the Anglican church in the American nation is the Episcopal church, where the bishop is the highest authority, not the Queen of England. America, culturally, anthropologically, historically, is closer to the people in England, true or false. But America is not a member of the British Commonwealth. We are. Mozambique is. What madness is that? Yeah, we applied for a special membership to be with our friends in the British Commonwealth. The Americans broke away because they wanted to define themselves in a new way. When they crafted the Constitution, they said the following, and this is very deep for them. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal, and they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those are the 3 identical things that the Americans strive for. To be alive, yeah? They will kill to protect their life. To be happy, yeah? And to be free. That is why it is the only country in the whole world, more than 190 countries, where you would have a very unusual phenomenon. The arrival of a black person in the White House. This man, who did not come from any struggle history, who did not claim to have liberated anything or anybody. He did not fight in any struggle, any war. He was not rich, and he did not have an English name. All 3 his names were frightening to the American voters. Barack Obama. Hussein, Obama. The only thing that mattered to have him elected is that he was born in Honolulu, Hawaii. A few years after Hawaii became a state of the United States, Barack Obama's father was not a citizen of the United States. He was a mere scholarship holder. You try that anywhere in the world, not China even. What this means is the project of nation was very important to the Americans. It took the European nations longer to create nations. They went to war with one another. We must be grateful that we have not fought against each other yet to create a nation. They believe in equality. They believe that if we pursue life, liberty, and happiness, you are one of us. In other words, a prostitute in Mexico, Dominican Republic, who has serviced several men in 2 weeks, every night, happens to be pregnant, and by virtue of the operations cannot recall, never mind remember, or have accuracy about who the father is. She crosses from Mexico to the United States, and 20 minutes later, that prostitute gives birth on the American soil, that child can run for president of the United States because he's a member or she's a member of the American nation. What I'm leading to is we as Namibians have not sat down together around a fire or under a tree or in chambers such as this to define who we want to be. We have been very clear about defining what we were against: colonialism and apartheid. We are still not clear who we want to be. You see, there is a difference between freedom from oppression, subjugation, suffering, disease, want, and freedom to. We are at the crossroads of our civilization. In many instances, we are still tribesmen and tribeswomen. Worse, we are members of political parties. If we were members of the nation, my friends, you would be seeing the Namibian flag flying higher than the colors of the parties. If we were a nation, you would not have a minister donning the colors of the political party, because that is against the oath that the president has taken. The president, cabinet ministers, and members of parliament, both National Assembly and National Council, take an oath on the day they assume their responsibilities, during which they say, I, so and so and so, do hereby solemnly swear that I shall, to the best of my abilities, do 1, 2, 3 things: defend the Namibian Constitution and protect all Namibian inhabitants. The Constitution says inhabitants. You cannot be protecting inhabitants if you are donning colors of your party. In other words, try to show up at an RDP rally in SWAPO colors. You'll be eaten alive. And I don't want to say the other way around. Now, the person who's speaking in the name of the nation, promoting and fueling divisiveness, animosity, hatred, cannot be the defender of the Namibian Constitution. Nations operate only under one rule: the Constitution of the Republic. Not laws of the church, not laws of the tribe, not laws of some Pentecostal prosperity church, not laws of your language group, but the Constitution. The Constitution of the Republic of Namibia has been desecrated by all of us, has been vandalized by all of us, has been insulted by all of us. When we promote divisions, when we promote difference, let me remind you in conclusion about the sacredness of the Namibian Constitution, second to none in the world, thanks to those 72 men and women who labored only for 80 days and crafted this document. It is not perfect, it's not holy, but it's sacred because it defines for the first time our identity as a nation. It bequeaths unto us a testament of hope, that we are here regardless of how we look, regardless of how we came here. It matters no more whether you came through the main door, the back door, the window, or the hut. We are here now. The Constitution of the Republic of Namibia says we are one Namibia, one nation. We thank those who labored from whatever side they came to make it possible. And here, my friends, I don't want to single out only the liberation movement. There were people, ladies and gentlemen, who were in this country, who made it possible that when our leaders came from overseas, they found a conducive environment within which to negotiate. And here, I must state boldly, there's one group that refused the Bantustanization of Namibia. Let it be corrected that the Herero stood firm and refused to accept a homeland government. Let it be stated that it was Chief Clemens Kapoor who said, we are one nation. We cannot accept a bogus arrangement. Kavangos had Kavango administration. Obama said the Obama administration. Kapuri was the government. We all accepted it, but the hero said, no, 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 no. Going back to the dream of Maharero in 1904. Let's set aside our differences and stand together as one nation. It is not easy to build a nation, my friends. There are contradictions. There are zigzag routes. There are moments when we have to quarrel and disagree, but we must accept that we are equal. We fight and quarrel, destroy one another over loyalty. The Namibian constitution is very, very clear, and you young people must hear this. The Namibian constitution mentions the word loyalty only once on page 1. Where the constitution says, the policy of national reconciliation is to foster peace and harmony and a common loyalty to the state. Did you hear me? The state. Not tribe, not church, not political party. As a matter of fact, the word party appears in the Constitution of the Republic of Namibia 13 times. 1-3. When the Constitution says, without mentioning any party, including the governing party, the word SWAPO does not appear in the Constitution. The Constitution says political parties have the freedom to organize and run for elections in democratic Namibia. 13 times. Now here is the gauntlet. The Constitution mentions the word citizen 55 times. 5-5. In other words, the most important actor in the life of the nation of Namibia is the citizen. The citizen, therefore, is not a hind light of the community, but a headlight of the community. A true participant. The president works for the citizens of Namibia, not the other way around. The president should fear the citizens of Namibia, not the other way around. We have laws, we have systems, but our mindset is not yet ready to treat all of us as one Namibia, one nation, equal under the sun of Africa, in the providence of God. Blessed are those whose hearts can bend, for they shall not be broken.
Political demarcation, in your view, does that speak to the notion of building a nation from Bantu, whatever? Because in my view, it is still the same uniform that the apartheid, from whatever his name was, had. Capri is amazing now. In a little corner there, Kavango, now they are divided in the middle. Kwangali is in the west, and there's those little groups in the east, Mpushus, Shamsus, and whatnot. Oshikoto, strictly Dongas, and few Guayamas in the eastern Oshikoto. Oshodonjupa, Ovaeros, few Damaras here and there. Sati, not because I'm from there, but maybe a bit balanced, because we are 8. Yes. 9, because we are also accommodating our Wanyama. North, Ovahimba, Kunedesa, Namaras. If you go there, you can see. Erongo means better. We are all there. Karas, we all know what it is. But a bit balanced because you have Lutherans that has almost everyone. And those guys are indeed a nation. They don't see each other as Tamaras, as Bambos. Oranjemund, I don't know, I have never been there. So, Professor, really now, to the way forward, do we really need these political demarcations? Are they not taking us back to Bantustan?
I would want to slightly differ with you on the claim that we as Africans do not think about the future. Sometime last year, I wrote an opinion to say, actually, if we learn from how we do things at the household level, where I come from, I come from the north. Basically, the welfare of the household reigns supreme over individual interest. Especially if you look at the parents. I mean, parents as the head of the house. Whatever they do, it should ultimately be the welfare of the household. The parents would make sure that the house or the children of the house eat and they are given clothes if need be, and basically the welfare of the household in that reigns supreme. But the only difference changes when, if say such individuals assume power at the national level. I don't know where the difference would come in, but you will see that difference. But because these people, the same people, they have houses. At the household level, they are making sure that at least their houses are well taken care of. But when they assume power, the interest changes. Instead of having the interest of the nation at the center of their activities, the interest changes to individual interest, basically. So in that sense, I would slightly differ with you in terms of saying, as Africans, we don't think about the future. I would think it depends on at which level. Because at the household level, things are quite different compared to the way we run government, for instance. I would also want to hear from you in terms of you spoke about citizenship. Are the materials, literature that you can recommend in terms of the construct of Namibian citizenship? I've vested interest in that because I'm doing research on based on that one. If there are some literature materials that you can recommend on the construct of Namibian citizenship, perhaps post-independence or maybe before independence as well.
I'm more worried as I live here today. I'm not really happy because what you did, you just created more problems. You created more problems because of this type of because what you did, we're trying to find a cure to exactly the problems. Now you are widening. You know, when somebody tells you that these are the holes, and then you try to plaster something, but actually changing more there. What I'm trying to say, Prof, is really the issue of identity. You would see that in our articulation, in attempts that, because clearly there's no ideological conversation in Namibia. People, even in the ruling party itself, they say they won't tell you ideologically where they stand in post-independence Namibia. Now the crisis is here. In our articulation, we try to say that AR is a Marxist, Panonian, leftist movement with Namibian characteristics. As our running point to try to deal with the question of identity and self-identification, self-definition, self-respecting, and all those things. But what comes closer, what we mean is that in the Marxist tradition, we try to get particularly the aspect of alienation For example, if you milk a cow, you know exactly if a cow had not eaten, you not milk it. You are acquainted to it, you are very close to it. What capitalism does, it puts ShopRite between you and the cow. Because you are no longer acquainted with the nature, you're no longer acquainted with it. It puts somebody in between. Between production in the field, it puts conflict, so you're no longer acquainted from that. So we try to draw interest. And the second aspect of that is the Fanonian tradition to somehow attempt to bring us to our humanity. Because once we struggle between Kavangos and what was, at least one thing that we can agree is our humanity, that we are human persons. But Prof, what I'm trying to get you in that is one the conclusion that we draw. From the Marxist tradition, we're not saying we are appropriating Marxist tradition in absolute terms because there are contradictions there also. Fanon, for example, says that Fanon is not interested in us to dialogue. If we have to read Fanon just from the perspective of violence. He says that in a violent culture, for example, a violent post-colonial culture, the solution is to fight. And when you try to internalize Fanon, is that, for example, in the African traditional society, if I kill his father, and his father was a breadwinner in the family, so the African judiciary says that I must pay 12 cattle. I'm going to be punished, but I must pay 12 cattle. Not to say that the life is worth 12 cattle, but it's to recognize that those 12 cattle can then be used to somehow, not necessarily compensate, but to assist the victims that are left behind. Now, in a post-colonial society, I kill his father. If I can find the best lawyer, I can be released tomorrow. The court doesn't even entertain to see that the children that were left will just enter the first year. So that's why we tried at least to look at our humanity, what Fanon says, because the post after independence is a completely different animal. Now, what we come closer in conclusion is this concept of decoloniality, dealing from trying to look at the work of Wathiongo and others, and he identifies two sorts of dismemberment. So what you do to a black person and an African person, you dismember them. First, some form of dismemberment, you dismember them from the African continent by putting them in the plantation to be slaves. So then you create Africa, continental Africa, then you create a diaspora in the Americas and other places. The second form of dismemberment is what you dealt with, creating countries, Botswana, South Africa. And I mean, if you go to Ongenga, people say, no, we were playing in Angola. To you as a person from Windu, but what do you mean we were playing in Angola? Because to them it doesn't matter. Last weekend I was in Kavango, and I discovered two things. First of all, which is a potential, they say that in 1903, the Sambu were fighting the Germans. So it means everything that we've written in our books since independence, the war of national resistance does not start in 1904. It starts in 1903. So, but what I'm trying to say from that narrative, you need to see that what Angola and Namibia means to us in Windu is not the same to the Sambus that travels across the river at the same time. So the second form of dismemberment becomes that. But I add two more forms of dismemberment. The third form of dismemberment becomes dismemberment from your culture, from your education, and from your tradition. Because for a some person that is able to identify a poison that can be put on the tip of an arrow and kill an elephant or a lion in 30 seconds, for example. If it was a white person, they would have gotten the Nobel Peace Prize in physics. But what this post-independence era doesn't recognize that form of education. So for me, that's a third form of dismemberment. But the last form of dismemberment is dismemberment from your subjectivity. Like, how do we teach the kids at Ogobola village about the railway? That child who have never ever seen a railway station must answer the question on the railway station. Yeah. So what it does, then it dismembers you from your own subjectivity. So what I am hoping that you can assist me in the conclusion. I will try. Yes.
This discussion needs more than one evening.
Yeah.
I only dealt with the surface of it. I was not going deep into the subject matter. Let me plead in haste, guilty, that I make the problem more problematic. I am St. Paul of Tarsus. St. Paul never met Jesus. Yet, most of what the Christian community knows about salvation and heaven was codified by Paul, who was initially in the business of killing those who heard about Jesus. Paul wrote in anger, frustration, in agony, in anguish, the letters to the Corinthians, the Ephesians. And he was making the problem even bigger. Repent. You are not right where you are. I could never pretend to offer a solution because I do not know it, I do not have it. Did you know that a doctor has no solution? The doctor doesn't solve a problem. He implements what he learned. Yeah? A witch doctor is a better problem solver than a medical doctor.
Don't make us go to what you
Because a witch doctor takes responsibility. Yeah?
Yeah.
The lawyer doesn't solve your problem. He just follows the prescripts and the precepts of the law. The law solves it. Let me deal with the dismemberment issue. It's so deep. To cut it short, in all the human civilization that we have on the planet Earth today, we, the Africans, are the most dismembered. And our dismemberment is deeper than cultural. It's profoundly related to our own self-understanding as human beings, created in the image of God. It has to do with our own self-perception of our humanity. For instance, the African people today are the only race group, so to speak, who do not have a word for their own religion. We don't. We even have different perceptions of same cultures, the same language, the same sensitivities to our plight. That is why we are schizophrenic when it comes to what we believe. When we are successful, Jesus is on our side. When we are in trauma, vulnerability, insecurity, kalunga kana ngombe must step in. For instance, if an African couple gets married in Onipa, there's a big celebration there. And 2 years, 3 years down the road, there is no child. Prayer is not helping. Jesus does not understand impotency. Where do they turn? Yeah? The unnamed, unrecognized doctor. Watch during the elections. As a matter of fact, watch between now and November. How many official vehicles will go to Caprivi? The Mzambezi. You will see Many people going because they feel insecure. They don't know what will happen at Congress. So they go there and they quietly ask me, who's here? And those who are resourced will go to Pretoria, Bushiri. Those who are better resourced even will go to Lagos, TB Joshua. That's a different Jesus. Yeah, not the Lutheran Jesus we know here. Not the Catholic Jesus we know here. Not the Anglican Jesus. It's a Bushiri Jesus. A prosperity Jesus. We do not have a word, we do not relate to our own God as other people do. The Chinese believe in their own things, and when they have depictions of God, that God will look like them. Yeah? The Jesus in Chinese churches look Chinese. The Western world have appropriated Jesus Christ as blonde, blue-eyed. He did not have any of those. And the Jesus and the angels look like them. The Arab world is appropriated for Muhammad. You cannot even have pictures of Prophet Muhammad because he already looks like them. The African is godless, imageless, powerless. You may think it is small, but our dreams do not return to our God. So we have a problem with our own identity. And that defines, in many, many ways, our self-identification, our self-description, our self-worth, our self-affirmation, our self-direction. My friends, I saw a case in Pretoria which made me very scared. That year, because of the transformation requirements, and you know South Africa has the biggest human science research council in Africa. It's very big on Pretoria Street. The requirement was the next president of the Human Science Research Council must be black. So these PhD holders from Canada, United States, Switzerland, Russia, were competing like bulls, my heck. And I had the privilege to be invited to be one of the interviewers. It was hilarious. A fellow, a Sotho man, who's very proud African and also very Christian, Methodist, comes for the interview. You know, when you go for interviews, you are always insecure. It doesn't matter who you are. Yeah? You always fear, what questions will they ask me? And one of the questions they always ask in an interview is, why do you think you are the best candidate for this job? You are now on your own. Jesus is not there. And we saw this black brother with a suit, tie, white shirt. There was blood interference here. Fresh cuts. He went to some uncle in the morning and here. Now the white shirt doesn't relate well to blood. It shows blood. Now those of us who came from villages understood. He did not get the job. A Zulu comes. He's more profoundly rooted in the tradition. When the question came, why do you believe you're the best candidate? The brother couldn't answer with his mouth wide open. There was a leaf here on the side of the mouth that some uncle gave to him to check this. And he got the job. We do not know whether it was a consequence of the leaf or his ability to convince the juror, but he got the job. My friends, when we are on our own as Africans, different forces are at play. We are dismembered from ourselves, and at times we are dismembered from the Christian faith. No doubt about it. We are angry at the Christian faith because we are in this dichotomy. Yeah? In 1965, to speak about a dismemberment, in 1965, Ali Mazrui wrote an essay in the American Journal of Political Science. Who are the Africans? And this professor applied his mind, all his force to answer this question. And he comes out to say, the only thing that binds us as Africans is our colonial experience. That is why our president says we're a child of international solidarity. That's a very deep statement. What if we were not oppressed? In other words, we begin our self-definition at the point where we were colonized. But Africa was there before. We don't go back to where we were. We start halfway. And that's why our solutions to our problems are half-baked. That's why our identity is wrapped up in the struggle for liberation, not about the future. Yeah, we are still saying, you go there are towns in Namibia today, now, what month is it? June, celebrating independence. They are poor, but they go and celebrate independence. And all of them have swap dresses. They find the means to make the dresses, to make the scarves. Why are we resourceful when we do things that make us the laughing stock to the world, and not when we express our own powerfulness and veracity as human beings? We need, therefore, to deconstruct. Deconstruction means, there was a French philosopher by the name of Jacques Derrida. Jacques Derrida specialized in this idea that before you understand a situation, you have to break it apart. If you want to be a good mechanic of a motor vehicle, you must be able to pull the vehicle apart and put it together again. Deconstruction. When we deconstruct our identity from what it has been enveloped in by those who make us feel bad about ourselves, who are we? Can you now see why our leaderships in Africa cling to power? Because they have nowhere to return to. Their whole identity is wrapped up in yesterday. Not the day before, not the month before, not the year before. We have a problem. My friend PLO Lumumba in Kenya, I see a lot of clips going around in Namibia with his teachings. The quickest way to become rich in Africa is to join politics. Our politicians lie, dissemble, and confuse. There is something wrong, therefore. My purpose as a teacher is to make the problem bigger so that you can dissect it and find the solution. If I knew the solution, I would be a politician. To tell you what to do. A teacher never solves problems. They just lay it out for you and you decide what to do with the information. There is a story that I hold very dear. It's an African story. There was a warfare in one of the countries in Africa, tribal war, and one tribe was literally wiped out by the stronger tribe. However, by the design of God, some of them survived the strife and they ran away and became refugees in other lands. One boy who was hiding in the tree and was not killed heard later that some of his relatives fled to other lands So he started a trip to go and find some of them. He believed that the good God could not have killed all my friends and relatives. Some of them must have survived. Wars are like that. So he walks and walks and walks. On day 5, he arrives in a village that he's never seen in his life. So he sees an old man working, toiling the earth. So he stealthily goes to the old man to ask for help. He greets politely, and the old man says, "What can I do for you?" And he says, "Well, I am a foreigner here." And the old man says, "I can see that. How can I help you? We had a war in my country. Did you hear that there are refugees somewhere here?" The old man says, "Yes. This is village Bongo Bongo. They are refugees." "Yeah, I heard about that. Where are the refugees?" And the old man says, "Well, they were here, but they were moved by the government somewhere else. That's direction." The young man says, "Thank you. Which direction do I walk from here?" He says, "You walk that way." "So thank you. You know where they are." I said, "I have an idea. Walk that way." So he walks and he realizes that the road forks into 2. This way, that way. Now the old man didn't tell him. So he goes back. He says, "I didn't ask you and you didn't help me. Now the road there, which way do I go?" I said, "Oh, when you get to the intersection, you go right." So the young man walks, and the old man stops his toil and he watches him. When he gets to the intersection, the old man beckons him back. "Come back, come back." Now he gets terrified. Now this is xenophobia here. Comes back, "Yeah. Did you ask me whether I know there are refugees who came here?" "Yes, I did." "Did you ask me where they were moved to?" "Yes, I did." "Did you ask me which road?" "Yes, I did." "Did you ask me whether to turn left or right?" "Yes, I did." "So you're going to turn left." So thank you. Now, knowing what you know, how many days will it take me to get there? The old man looks at him. "Now that I've seen you walk, I can tell it will take you a day." And the young man said, "How do you know?" "Because I saw you walk. That's why I was watching you. Now that I know your pace, I can tell you it will take you a day. I can stand here and give you theories. What is important for you is to watch my walk. Whether what I'm telling you makes sense or not. And yourself, you must decide what makes sense for you. Never allow other people to prescribe solutions for it. It becomes a political solution. And that's what we have today. Half-baked, talking about that Africans don't have a sense of the future. It's true. You answered your own question. Africans are very good when they work with their families, and the future ends there. When it comes to people we don't know, we are stuck in today and yesterday. It gets deeper than that, my friends. There are languages in Africa. There was a Professor John S. Mbiti who came here and he studied the languages of the African continent. He was in Oshakati for a long time, studied us, and he wrote a book, African Philosophies and Religion, 1969. He's Kenyan. And he offered a theory that Africans have a problem with their identity. They have a very lively memory of the past. They have a very active participation with the present, in the present, but they are absent in the future. To the extent that he says, maybe it is in the language that Africans speak. African languages in the main lack objectivity, subjectivity, in the German language, there is what they call conjunctive, conjunctivity. You can say in German, ich wäre ein Richmann. If I was, ich wäre ein Reichmann. If I was rich. You cannot say that in African languages. In African languages are not objective. You cannot say, if I were rich, I would do this. You're either rich or you're poor. In our languages, you cannot say, I liked what the president said in the beginning, but the conclusion was rubbish. You can't say that. In our thinking, in our worldview as Africans, you are either for or against. Yeah? You cannot say, I like you, but I don't love you. No. And that's why we have a problem with disagreement. When you criticize the Western worldview that was depicted very eloquently by that French philosopher René Descartes, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. My thoughts are important. In Africa, your thoughts are nothing. It's your relationships that count. It's not what you think, it's who you are related to, how do you get along with the elders. That's why we have this serious teenage pregnancy, when young girls cannot talk back to the principal, cannot even look at the eyes of the elder. We have a problem. It gets worse than that. In some of the languages that we have on the continent, there are 4 in Namibia. My own Timbukushu, Rusambio, Now Romano, Subia, and Namadamara, Kwepegoa. We have a problem with the past and the future. Because the word we use in Timbukushu, Romano, Subia, and Nama for yesterday is the same word for tomorrow. Peunda, zona, yona, Paris. We shall meet yesterday. We are dismembered because of our languages. Our languages are not very helpful when we talk about the new world. For instance, in all the Bantu languages that I master, we do not have significant or singular translations or words that are equivalent to what we speak about in English, Afrikaans, German, Spanish, Portuguese, Latin. Example, in our languages, there is no distinct word for hear, taste, smell, feel. All of these things are here. I came in here and I heard the smell. So you cannot really translate your emotions from hearing to smelling to sensing. Yeah? I hear the pain here. You go to England and you're being hosted by very good people and they ask you, how's your meat? It's fine, but I don't hear the salt in my meat. So we need to deal with our limitations. In there also is our strength. We can express things so profoundly accurately that you cannot do in English. You saw my dictum on Friday about Atikuri Atoyi. And you saw what I said about what his warning was to the youth. Yeah? When he was walking like this, frail and crooked, and they would say he was taking too long to cross the street. And he would say to them, no, don't worry. You may look, you are strong and powerful now, but please remember, Oshipa, Nasho Shalengo. When you see a beautiful leather, it was a cow before. I was a cow too. Don't despise them, because you will be there one day. They're such profoundly deep teachings in our languages. In the proper Oshiwambo, you say thank you to an old person, and don't try to translate it into English, Afrikaans, German, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, or Latin. Kulupa no mesho, or meo tankutasni. Now try to translate that. We have been dismembered from our own reality. Yeah? The idea of rape, my friends. What is rape in Oshindongo, Shibanyama? No, that's not rape. There are two words here that are talking. Ukwata is to grab, onkondo is power. Yeah, that means you cannot rape your own girlfriend. There is no force. A husband would not rape his wife. They have 3 children together. Because the Africans did not rape as we understand rape today. Do we know what they did, what punishment they did when a person imposed himself by virtue of his masculine force and power to molest a woman? You are right, Job. Africa was about restorative justice. When you were punished, you paid 5 heads of cattle. It was a decision that was arrived at through lengthy discussions by every member under the tree. In other words, the situation was restored to its original status. You owned up to your mistake, and everybody understood. Your uncles also owned up to what you did. Your mother cried also. I have a bad son here, but I'm going to work with him now. So everybody was satisfied. We don't go to that. There was a professor at UNAM, Manfred Hinz. He's a German. And he was putting forth a theory that we need in Namibia to introduce a traditional court of appeal to sort out some of these cases that need emotional participation of the elders in the community. Yeah? Rape case, when a woman is raped, my friend, and they go to court, the questions they pose are very insulting. Now, our women would not participate in the discussion. Now, check this. In 2012, I had the privilege to run a workshop in Pretoria for the Lutheran bishops of Southern Africa. It was serious. There were 3 Namibian bishops. I felt covered. On day 2, I prayed in the morning. I said, I'm going to challenge this reverence today. So I came in. That day we were talking about how the church can participate to assist communities to manage the HIV/AIDS pandemic. So I come and say, yeah, bishops, this is a very serious matter. Let's talk about your background. And everybody proudly said, I was a village boy, I didn't have shoes, and I went to school, all that nice things. So I say now, if I put it to you, it may sound offensive, but I mean it. I'm going to put it to you, reverends, that most of you in this room are rapists. What? Most of you in this room raped. No, we are bishops. No. I said, no, let's deal with this. We were bragging about how rural we were, how the values of the community dictated our behavior and latter conduct. Reverend Bishop, try to think in your own mind and have a recollection of the first sexual encounter you had in your life. You don't have to be clear. would you say to yourself that that girl said yes? And as I went on and on and on, one Congolese bishop said, let's pray. It was agreed in that hall, my friends. Every bishop agreed. Because in the environment that produced us as men today, it was spoken that no girl would say yes. And the girl was spoken to, so you don't say yes even if you are willing. The teachings are not conversant here. So the boys are, I'll show you, it won't last long. You are dismembering the child. And he doesn't have the vocabulary to tell anybody what happened. In fact, it is an art of decency for her to resist. Because I tell you, even now, 99% of the men sitting in this room now, if they proposition a girl today in Windhoek, 27 years after independence, you check out a girl at KFC, you have more money at the month end, and you can see she's struggling with change. And you say, I can buy you a bucket. Can you go with me? And if she says, why did you wait so long? You will run. Okay, you don't get up in it. That girl says yes to everybody. Only you, my friend. Because the teachings that produce the men in us, are at variance with the project of freedom and individual participation. Most of us in this room are rapists.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have pressing questions too. I can maybe take one question.
Which one is that?
The 14 regions.
The 14 regions. I was avoiding them. Thank you very, very much. The 14 regions, are we really, thank you, have we embarked on the project of one Namibian nation? If we look at the way we have been going about, I don't know. My take is not enough. Let me give two historical examples of true nation building and adapt to our own circumstances. South Africa, the most developed economy, the most developed capitalist economy on the African continent. It was a backward economy before. In 1910, when the South Africans seized power from Great Britain and they became a union, they thought about the future. There were 4 republics in South Africa at the time: Orange Free State, Transvaal, Natal, and the Cape Province. So they had a project South Africa. We do not have a project Namibia. They sat together and said, now, how do we work this out? So now, we have to develop the 4 provinces as a nation. The way to do this is to make absolutely certain that each province has an activity that the others don't have, to stimulate economic development, economic growth, job creation, wealth distribution. Natal shall retain the main administration of postal services and harbors, Durban. Those people who work in the boats and post offices, they get their stuff from Durban. Orange Free State, what do you get? We make sure that the law, the Supreme Court, the appellate division is in Free State. So all the lawyers gravitate towards that. They find their wives there, they marry their husbands there, they send their children there. They forget about where they come from. It is the province that produces their career success. Cape Province, Parliament. Transvaal, the seat of government. That is why today, even union buildings where Jacob Gedlesekisa Zuma is sitting is in Pretoria, but Parliament is in Cape Town. What do you have is in all these spots, the airports are developed, the roads are developed. And people forget about where they come from and they hold themselves responsible for developing the region. The US, the same. Why is the capital in Washington, D.C.? The capital is in Washington, D.C. Washington, District of Columbia. They cannot vote because they are not the state. To make sure that they are neutral from the political trappings of the system. And all members of Congress live in the same size homes. You see, they thought it through. We did not think it through. If we thought it through, my friends, today, we would have a different configuration of our economic stimulations altogether. For instance, you would understand that if we had a project Namibia, today there would be a fully fledged University of Agriculture in Katimamulilo. Yeah? It's a breadbasket. The water is there, the soil is there. Yeah? There would be a fully fledged University of Education in Rundu. There would be an academy for marine studies in Lodritz or Walvisbay. Today, there would be a national sports academy in Tsumkwe. Where you pick them up, you just give them the right Nike shoes. Nike will sponsor that. You give them the right diet. You show them the infrastructure. Those guys would arrive a day or two before the Ethiopians. That's called talent identification, talent management, and talent development. Jamaica, it was on the radio just this morning. Jamaica has a population of just under 3 million people. Produces what? The best athletes, because they have a plan. They develop the young people. The young person in Jamaica is more important than the Prime Minister. Usain Bolt is from a very poor neighborhood. But guess what? If you watch Usain Bolt run and you blink, you miss him. You cannot afford to blink. They have a plan. It gets worse. My friends, you, the young people, must please get us out of this. We need to plan our economy better. There is no planning whatsoever. If you throw a qualitative bomb right now on the Hilton Hotel, like this, the size that Trump just threw in Afghanistan, the nation of Namibia will have to recreate itself. You'll knock out Hilton, you'll knock out Kalahari Saints, you'll knock out the municipality, you'll knock out the Bank of Namibia, you'll knock out the Supreme Court, yeah? You'll knock out defense, you'll knock out Dr. Muhammad's new office, you'll knock out Christus Kirche, Parliament, and. All the banks, even Agribank, saying 1 mile radius, and you tell me you are planning. We are subsistence economies. We Africans live today. Planning is not one of our weaknesses. In fact, in Africa, If you become too individual, like me and my nephew Job here, you have a problem with the system. Why is he not listening? An unruly child. He was not even born when Kasinga happened. In 1963, a Kenyan scientist who was studying aerodynamics, the business of flying, went back to Kisumu, and he was experimenting with what would have become the first aeroplane in Africa. He assembled some papers together, some wood here, grass there. Eventually it would jump 3 yards, and he improved on it. Now, the consequence of that, it became an attraction in the village. The boys were no longer going to fetch cattle. They were watching this man. And the word reached the chief. There's this man doing all kinds of witchcraft, things jumping up and down. Yeah, he creates things and they jump. It's distracting the community. So the chief called him in. Said, okay, you so and so, I believe that you are a danger to the community. You are making all the boys lazy. Stop. And he did not develop it. What would have happened in Europe? The government would have called him in and said, you need a different site to experiment with this. We'll give you land where you can do this. We must protect you. I have a friend, my friends, in Pretoria. He finished his PhD at Wits University in nuclear physics. I cannot spell what he was studying. It was too complicated for me. But this man is a serious scientist. Abe Mukai. His thesis ended up on the internet. So it's reached the United States. One day, Abe woke up. He was living in Mamelodi, it's a township near Pretoria. There was a knock on his door. Comes out, there are 3 men in suits, all white. They say, sorry, sir, are you Dr. This? Yes. Sorry that we came without warning you. Would you please mind to have an appointment with us at the Sheraton Hotel tomorrow? We have something to discuss with you. As a scholar, he says, well, I'll change my day. And he came, he went to Sheraton Hotel. These Americans had a plan. They say, we picked up your research on the internet. It's very important, the technology of the United States. Are you married? Yes. Children? Yes. We already know that you are married, you have 3 children. We have places for all 3 of your children in Connecticut. Free. We are inviting you to join Harvard University. And in 6 months, you'll become an American citizen. So he goes home. What do you think he did? There is a nuclear physicist in South Africa called Dr. Gordon Sibia. Gordon Sibia. He finished, and he's a very serious scientist. He comes back to South Africa. Everybody knows that he's a scientist. What does the ANC government do? Makes him a PS of rural development. He's now an alcohol victim as we speak. Last year, there was a workshop here under the auspices of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, and I was invited to speak there. What happened is that the leaderships of opposition parties from Africa came together to Namibia. Namibia is a very, very important destination for international conferences, and we thank our leaders for making it possible. So we speak, we talk, and then one leader from Uganda was very excited by what I said. And he said, no, I have to respond because what you said here really brings it home to me. And we're now listening to this man. He's a big shot. in Uganda. He's number 2 in the system of Uganda. And he says, I have 3 children. I went to university in Orlando, Florida, in the United States. And my second child was born in Florida. We are now all in Kampala. When the terrorist attacks, the Islamic terrorist attacks happened in East Africa, Tanzania and Kenya, and Uganda. One morning, the doorbell rang, the gate bell rather. His wife came out, and there were 5 people in Marine uniform. You know the American Marines? Short hair, ready to war. And the wife says, no, maybe you had the wrong address. No. Could we speak with the household? So they come in, and this American say, we have it on good authority that there is an American citizen in this house. American citizen. Yeah, is any of your children an American citizen? No, we are all Ugandans. So was one of your children born in America? Yes, Donald. Yeah. We picked him up in the system, and we're gonna put up a protection unit outside to protect him because he's American. Now he says further, what really killed him, wherever they go, he, his wife, and 3 children, the 5 of them have to apply for visa to enter African countries, except Donald, who was born in the United States of America. He needs no visa to enter any African country. Can you now see that the Americans had a project which was oriented towards the future, not today, not yesterday. It's true we worry about the past too much and not the future. My friends, John, who wrote the book of Revelation, was a blind man. His eyes were plucked out on the island of Patmos. Yet the blind man could see the future and could write about Revelations, the world to come. The future, my friends, is about the youth. But our life orientation, our political worldview, is more about the elders than those who are yet to come.
Looking at the youth of the 1980s uprising, they came from different backgrounds, but they were united for a common purpose. How can the youth of today, because tribalistic is starting to show up, what can we learn from that youth?
I don't think that my generation and over can understand George Kambanda. I don't think so. And some of that misunderstanding is rather innocent. I worked with Nelson Mandela, and I could see some of the innocence when it came to gender relations. He did not understand the new world that women were equal to men. He would pronounce equality, but in his heart, he was not there, and it was not his fault. There were days when he would hold a cabinet meeting with all the ministers, men and women. And at the end of the meeting, he would say, can the women leave us alone now that we can talk big things? Is he insulting? We must look at their world. If you sit and listen to Dr. Ndioma, Theo Ben-Gurion, and that generation, even I feel handicapped to participate in the discussion. They control the universe. When they tell you, we started with nothing from nothing, we went from one country to another. Theoben puts me in my place. He said, you know, when we left Namibia, we would be arrested every weekend as we were crossing the border between the Botswana land and Nyasa land, the Botswana land and Northern Rhodesia, Southern Rhodesia, to the extent that Theoben Gurira had to alter his name to Peter Mafudira to qualify as a Nyasa from Nyasa land. And you hear the tales of how they knocked on doors and they were chased away. Imagine the first encounter, the SWAPO leadership, with very limited English, arrives in Algeria with more limited English. They were from Southwest Africa. Our people are suffering. And this junior officer in Home Affairs or Foreign Affairs, what the F is Southwest Africa? No, it's a small country near South Africa. Oh, we have heard about South Africa. And one step after the other, they went on and on until they convinced the world in the United Nations chambers to recognize them as the sole and authentic representatives of the Namibian people. If you went through that journey, it's very difficult to give it up. Yeah? Before I was removed from NIPAM, I had a very humbling experience. I need to share this with you as young people. I ran a workshop for PSS in Walvis Bay. Now, my understanding of the way people are deployed in jobs was limited and therefore prejudiced. I thought some of these people should really not be PSS. They cannot read, they cannot write, they cannot speak English. Why are they there? So during breaks, they would share with me what they went through. And I'm qualified to mention a name because I have his permission to mention this name, Willem Kuyema. Now the PS works. The description of his name didn't tell me that he was in the war, Willem Kuyema. They could have probably joined the swap 12:15. Now they share with me what these brothers went through. And me as a village boy were diminished to this level. I felt so small that they would cross the river swimming with all their possessions and all their ammunition to come and fight. They learned to assemble and deconstruct a gun. And they tell me there were times when they would be in the bush for 3 to 5 months without food. Either steal food from the community or convince the community to feed them. Now this is what really got me. They would wear the same clothes for months. And there were days when they would spend the day naked because they were hanging their clothes in the trees so that the lice, the insects in the clothes would die. What do I say to these people? We need to understand it will take time. The youth must come in with respect, dignity, honor. Speak your voice like Steve Biko did without insulting. Because your world is different from my world and their world. They cannot understand equality the way you understand it. They can't. My friends, it took the Israelites who were freed by Moses from Egypt. Remember, the Bible says none of them reached the promised land. They all wandered by and wandered in the wilderness until a generation died. You heard that. Now, there's a theological scholarship, those people who study things deeply, they say God knew that that generation would be the wrong crowd in the promised land. They would not understand and appreciate the fruits of the promised land. There was too much Egypt in their head. So Egypt had to die with a generation. Yeah? It takes time. Let me end with this story about what you must do as the youth. Study the history of your people. Study Frantz Fanon. Study Steve Biko. Study Thomas Sankara. Study Kwame Nkrumah. Study Julius Nyerere. One way Nyerere succeeded in persuading people to move out of yesterday to tomorrow is to use their own emotional makeup. He would teach Swahili in schools because he understood that if I reach them in their own language, they will understand the future better. And he used the idioms and the stories of Africanity to give them back their power. For instance, Nyerere would stand in classrooms and say to young people, we are Africans. And in his own language, he would say to them, we have a civilization. Mgeni siku mbili. Siku ya tatu, mpe jembe akalime. Na mtoto wake, mtume akachunge ng'ombe. That's Swahili. In Africa, you are a guest, you are a visitor for 2 days. Siku mbili. On the third day, you are a member of the community. You can go and work in the field. And if you have a child, that child joins other children to go and fetch the cattle. Because community is very important. Job is right. Our humanity is at stake. Even Jesus, my friends, had to learn the art of leadership. 99% of you did not know where Jesus learned the art of leading. Let me reveal the secret to you. The Bible is silent, completely silent, on 18 years of Jesus of Nazareth's life. We stop seeing Jesus when he's 12, when he gets upset and becomes unruly, gets violent in the synagogue. He is so unruly to his own mother. The mother says, we've been looking for you. And he says, but don't you know I'm in the kingdom of my Father? You try that with your own mother. And Jesus disappears completely from the scene. We don't read about him. We don't see him until he is 30. And we see him recruiting people to follow him. Where was he for 18 years? He went to school. Jesus left his village to go to India in the Himalayas to get an education. There is scholarship now that traces the route that he followed to go to India, and he learned at the feet of the Buddhists. And when he came back, he understood himself better. How do we know this? We know it because you can see the examples of his life. Number one, his simplicity, yeah? He did not have any luggage. He just walked around eating what was offered to him. That's not Jewish. No, it's not Jewish. Jewish have neighborhoods. They build businesses. He had no business. Two, had he lived in the Holy Land today, they would have given him a wife when he was before 20 years old. That's what Jewish people do. He had no wife, no girlfriend, because he was away during those tempting years. Three, every now and then, Jesus would disappear from his men and say, let me go and regroup. to meditate, to understand my purpose. That's not Jewish. That's Hindu. That's Indian. To go and sit. Jews don't do that. To sit still and you hear to see the snake. It's not Jewish. But finally, he was completely anti-Jewish in his practice and teaching and his behavior, even in times of serious crisis. He says, when a man hits you, turn the other cheek. That's not Jewish, my friend. The Jews believe in tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye, even today. He went to school. My friends, go to school. Learn and take your role as leaders for tomorrow. Don't contest the past. There's an Athenian, Armenian philosopher by the name of Agathon, Agathon, who said, not even God can change the past. Thank you very much.